Inside the Huddle with Sky Sports, Neil Reynolds and Jeff Reinebold.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Huddle, and this is going to be a first for the 2024 season. We're going to be with you on a Monday, breaking down the games from the night before, which is why there's already a croak in my voice. I'm Neil Reynolds, joined by my regular partner, Jeff Reinebold. And Jeff, it's good to have the NFL back in our lives. It's good to do this where we can react straight away.
This is fantastic because I just finished watching the Rams game on Sunday Night Football.
It's crazy.
And, what a weekend of football for the first. I mean, we had drama off the field. We had drama on the field. It was amazing.
We're going to go through some of it. Talking points, games. We won't do every game, of course, but we'll pick out some of the main games, some of the talking points. You talked about off the field. Let's start with, an hour and a half, 2 hours before the games kicked off. On Sunday, we learned that Dak Prescott is the new highest paid player in NFL history. 4 years, $240 million. So he's the first $60 million per year quarterback, Jeff. This is a guy, there's a lot riding on Dak anyway this year. 2-5 record in the playoffs. Now he's got this big wage bill. But they get off to a winning start, 33-17 at Cleveland. He didn't have to do too much.
And I think, but what he did is exactly what he needs to do for the Cowboys. Stay out of the interceptions. Mm-hmm. He was very, very solid. He found CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be his go-to guy. And I think that if you aren't a Dak Prescott fan, or you weren't a Dak Prescott fan before, you need to be one now, because you talk about handling a really tough situation with real class. And I think he really did. He bet on himself.
Yep.
But he didn't make it adversarial with the Cowboys. He made it clear that he wanted to be a Cowboy, came to training camp, worked, led his team, didn't get distracted by all of it, although the media tried to distract him. And I think it's a great sign if you're a Cowboy fan, certainly. But I think it's really a lesson to a lot of guys about how to handle what can be sometimes, adversarial negotiations.
We're seeing more and more quarterbacks go up, Jeff. $50 million a year, then Tua's 53, and Trevor Lawrence and Jordan Love are 55. I don't want to say it's a going rate, but does it surprise you that Dak got 60, or is that just the way this is moving as more money flows onto rosters?
Well, I thought that it was going to be above 55. I thought it was going to be in the high 50s. 60 is a new threshold, but it's the new norm now. Yeah. And the thing that amazes me about it, Neil, $231 million of it are guaranteed. There's an $80 million signing bonus. That's a pretty expensive autograph.
That's incredible. Over the next 5 years, he'll earn $39 million more than any other quarterback in the NFL. So all eyes are going to be on him. Jeff, just looking at the quarterback picture, Patrick Mahomes and our friend Lee Steinberg negotiated that deal with the Chiefs. 10 years it was. Locked him in for 10 years. It was unprecedented. And I suppose this was going to happen. Mahomes is now the 13th highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
And with that comes the scrutiny and the questions and, why are you the 13th highest paid quarterback when you're the top quarterback in the National Football League? And I think, and again, one of the things I enjoy about Patrick Mahomes is he's never made it about him and about the money that he's making. He's always made it about the championships they're chasing. And,
Tom Brady.
That's what you really would like to see. I think, you look at these things, and the quarterback is without a shadow of a doubt the most important player on the field. And if you don't believe that, ask Cleveland, ask some of the other teams, Atlanta, some of the other teams who anticipated great quarterback play and didn't get it in week one. And for their seasons, they're going to need to get it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Cleveland because Dak did play within himself. 179 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Dallas only had 265 total yards, and they didn't need any more than that for a comfortable win. Deshaun Watson was sacked 6 times, 2 interceptions. Jeff, he only played 6 games last year, 6 the year before, missed the entire 2021 season. Of course, lots of off-the-field issues with Deshaun Watson. Is he going to get back to the guy we saw in Houston, or are you seeing a quarterback that's in a kind of permanent decline? Because there was a lot not to like there for Cleveland.
But yeah, the amount of ring rust that he had on him was shocking, frankly. Because again, it takes you back to the old football adage that there's only one way to get better at football, and that's playing football. And you can go out and you can throw skelly and you can do all of those things and drills and all of it, but live bullets, playing live on Sunday are what that's what you're measured by, and you've got to be able to do that enough to get comfortable going back out there. I heard Aaron Rodgers say today that he has to tell himself now that he's great again. That's one of the greatest ever played the game, and he has to go out and convince himself because he hasn't played.
It's interesting you say about having to play, because there wasn't exactly a proliferation of 300-yard and 400-yard passes this week. The guys didn't play. Half the quarterbacks wouldn't have.
Hey, that is so true. You think about I watched the Detroit game, and I was watching some of the stuff that both quarterbacks were doing, and I was really, really impressed because you're right. They don't play in the preseason, and you saw a number of misfires over the course of the first weekend, or right close to making a great throw or what. And it's those little seconds, those milliseconds between a completion and not completion, a yard short, a yard long, or whatever. And the football is going to get better as we go forward. It's going to take, I think you and I have talked about this a number of times, Neil, but it takes about a month before you really find out who you are.
Tyreek Hill had an eventful day, a stressful day, an emotional day for him, Jeff. Miami Dolphins wide receiver, of course, stopped by the police for a traffic violation, 1 block from the stadium. And then the video emerges. He's been handcuffed. He's being pinned to the floor. We don't know the full story yet as we're recording, but it seemed excessive. Jonnu Smith, the Dolphins tight end, Calais Campbell, defensive lineman, apparently pulled up and tried to help Tyreek. He was released by the police. He was allowed to go onto the stadium. He had 7 for 130 and a touchdown scored from 80 yards out. Miami beat Jacksonville with Jason Sanders' field goal, 52 yards. But this must have been hard for Tyreek to put that behind him and then go and have a day.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why coaches, you keep teams in a hotel the night before the game.
Yeah, even a home game.
You take the team bus to the hotel. Well, that's kind of become the old way. But when you got to understand what an emotional that the buildup of an entire week is coming down to these 3 hours on Sunday, and you're driving the way you normally drive to work to the stadium, and then all of a sudden there's changes in the traffic pattern because there's 65,000 people, and the police, and Tyreek was going faster than he admitted he was going faster than he should have. He's got Drew Rosenhaus, his agent, in the car with him, and the policeman pull him over, and I'm sure in his excitement and anticipation of the game and all the adrenaline flowing, getting ready for the game, he wants to get to the stadium, right? And it's just one unfortunate circumstance after another. And you mentioned Jonnu Smith and Calais. Calais was in handcuffs. They had both Calais and the Cheetah in handcuffs. And it's like, come on, man. When will common sense prevail?
It's interesting. Even Premier League teams here, like the night before a game, will stay in a hotel, even if it's a home game. That's one thing I hadn't thought about there. Miami don't do that. There's some teams don't. They let the players stay in their own beds. It's an interesting angle of that. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. Stay in the AFC East. So, boy, Jeff, they had to dig deep. There was a few teams that the narrative was getting flipped on its head early last night. Arizona jumped out to a 17-3 lead in Buffalo. But then the way Buffalo came back should not surprise us. Josh Allen threw 2 touchdown passes and he ran for 2 touchdown passes. Sean McDermott's going to have plenty of here's where we need to get better tape, but he's also going to know he's got a guy who can provide a quick fix.
No question. He put that team on his back. And the middle 8, we call them the middle 8, the last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half. the Bills won the game, in my opinion, because they dominated the middle eight. They got a touchdown at the end of the first half. They had deferred. Arizona took the ball and jumped out to a quick lead, but that gave them the first possession of the second half. And what did they do? Drove the ball down, got it in the end zone. 14-point swing. Momentum completely changes. And Josh Allen, Neil, he's got Keon Coleman, a rookie, and he's got Shakir, and he doesn't have, in my opinion, a great cast around him, but he just makes everybody better, including the offensive line, because, he got a couple balls in the end zone just on sheer manhood.
Right. I love that. That's not a technical term, is it? That's not a football term. But I know what you mean. You're picturing it. You're painting the picture perfectly. Two quarterbacks who I thought showed us something on Sunday night were C.J. Stroud of Houston, Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts. So Houston win the game 29-27 in Indianapolis. But these are two of the three youngest quarterbacks in the NFL, Jeff. They're both 22 years old. Stroud threw for 2 touchdowns. Richardson threw for 2 touchdowns, ran for a touchdown as well. I mean, first of all, we'll talk about the quarterbacks, then some of the new additions to Houston. But sign me up for these two in the same division for the next 10 years or more, because, and that was kind of, I'm hoping Anthony Richardson plays sensibly, because he didn't last year when he ran. I thought he didn't run very sensibly at times on Sunday, but I want to see a whole season of him for the Colts going up against CJ Stroud.
No question. And I think that rivalry has a chance to be as great as any of them that we've seen. You look at Anthony Richardson, he throws for about 50% completions. But you talk about arm talent, those 2 deep balls that he threw to Pierce were like unbelievable throws. Like I'm talking about a 60, 65-yard ball in the air throws. Those were monstrous throws. And then he also has that ability as a running quarterback. You get down around the goal line, and it's like handing it to, Derrick Henry. He's a big, strong man.
Well, he scored on his run. He dragged a couple of defenders into the end zone with him, didn't he? Kind of lowered his shoulder. That's when you do that as a quarterback. You don't do that in midfield, down by the goal line. So that is a really positive thing for the Colts. They couldn't stop Joe Mixon, though. 30 carries, 159 yards and a touchdown. New running back for the Texans coming over from Cincinnati. Stephon Diggs at wide receiver comes over from the Bills, has a couple of receiving touchdowns, including one on 4th and goal. This was Mixon's day, though, I think, Jeff, wasn't it? It's great when you see these, you kind of validate you. I know it's only 1 week, but you see those off-season signings and they step up for you big time in week 1.
Yeah, and Mixon did exactly what they brought him in to do. He's always been a physical finisher. He's always been a back that you get into 4-minute offense and, you just hand it to him and he's going to get the game won. And when you're a closer like that, it was poetic to me, because on his last run that he hit for about an 8-yard gain, and the clock ran out, and he just picked up and dropped the ball like a mic drop. It was like, okay, that's what I do. And, and you think about Houston, and with all of those weapons, Stroud and Collins and Diggs and Tank Dell and Mixon and Dalton Schultz. You don't even talk about Dalton Schultz. And Dalton Schultz is a better than average. I mean, he's an upper half of the NFL tight end. That they are loaded. I mean, loaded.
I was trying to think, Jeff, of which victory would have pleased you the most, and I dwelt on the Steelers winning without scoring a touchdown, 6 field goals and low defense. But I think the Chicago Bears victory over the Tennessee Titans would have pleased you, because you always remind us it's all 3 phases. It needs everyone. And the Bears needed to help Caleb Williams in his rookie debut in the NFL. Yes. So Tennessee led by 17-0. But Chicago scored on special teams. They scored a defensive touchdown. Caleb Williams' numbers, 14 of 29, just 93 passing yards. No touchdowns, no picks. 5 runs for 15 yards. So let's start there, first of all, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Alarm bells, or is this just a case of Caleb need to feel his way in? What do you think?
Ooh, I tell you, that's a great question, because when I heard him in his post-game presser and he talked about, hey, I don't care about the statistics. What matters is that we win. And I'm sure he feels that way. But, and here's the big but, now all of us, the media, get a chance to start picking it apart. And it's going to be headlines. It's going to be talk show. It's going to be all over there about what's wrong with Caleb Williams. This was what a disappointing debut. Is this what Bears fans, got excited? All of that. And that starts to wear on you as a player. And you may be team first, but you're also a prideful competitor. And so you're going to want to go out and show people. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he handles this, because, Neil, you've dealt with so many elite level quarterbacks. You've interviewed them all, and you know that they're cut from a different cloth and how sensitive they can be sometimes to things that would just roll off our backs.
Yeah, I mean, he would always say that it's about the win, and that's the most important thing. But there's no way on this earth he envisioned himself having 93 passing yards in his NFL debut. And when I watched a lot of that game, you see in the plays come through on Red Zone, he made some of those flashy plays, some of those bits that make you say, oh, wow. But he also missed some wide open receivers down the sideline for what would have been touchdowns. So I now, next time I see him out there, Jeff, want to know, can you handle the stage? How will you handle the stage? I'm sure he will figure it out, because I always go back to the Super Bowl when the Packers beat the New England Patriots, and Brett Favre, for the first 2 drives, fired everything over everyone's heads because he was so amped up and hyped up. We were hyped up to see Caleb Williams in the NFL. I wonder if he was a little bit too hyped up. Only he will know that, him and his coaches. But he certainly missed some throws that should have been touchdowns.
And I think there's a lesson in there for Coach Eberflus and the offensive staff. You need to give him some things early in the game that are gimmies. Give him some simple things to do and let him get his confidence going, because, there's like you, and you're right. I'm sure in his mind, he was going to throw for 300, 3 touchdowns, and it was going to be, storybook. Well, sometimes it isn't storybook. Sometimes it's it's a horror movie, and that was a horror movie for him. But how do you deal with it? How do you bounce back? And that's something that I'm sure in their building they're talking about as a football team. Hey, we showed resiliency. We showed we can win on 2 or 3 phases. Now offense, let's get the 3rd phase going, because we've got a good football team here in Chicago.
I said there were no quarterbacks that kind of went 400 yards, 500 yards, anything ridiculous, but very impressed by Baker Mayfield, Jeff, and how he continues to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So against the Washington Commanders, Baker went 24 of 30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And I'm just thinking about his progression. I was at the game a couple of years back, Thursday Night Football, meaningless game, Rams taking on the Raiders. Baker had signed there as an emergency quarterback, 36 hours before that game, throws the winning touchdown pass. Then he disappears again. He goes to Tampa Bay, plays last year for $4 million per year. Then he earns himself a bigger contract. It's on like $38 million per year this year. I think it's a great story of redemption for somebody who was the first overall pick, who we were writing off. I mean, he was lost in the football wilderness, and here he is now performing week in and week out as an NFL starter again.
Yeah, and I think it is a great story, and it's a great story not only of redemption but of maturity. He's matured as a player. He's matured as a man through all of the things that he's had to go through. I think his time in Los Angeles was really good for him, because I think took him out of what was a really kind of a circus atmosphere in Cleveland, where there was too much attention too early, all of the things that you worry about a guy like Caleb Williams. You're the first player picked in the draft. You're the Messiah. You're going to lead this team out of the wilderness. Well, sometimes it doesn't work that way. And then what does it do to your career? And I am going to throw a bouquet at you right now. Publicly, I'm going to throw a bouquet at you because you were the only guy that I had talked to in all the football guys that I talked to. You were the only guy that said, I can't wait to see Sam Darnold quarterback the Minnesota Vikings.
Did all right, didn't he?
He did. He really, really did. He didn't throw interceptions. He looked composed. He looked a little nervous early, but I thought once you know what, and they do a good job of with play design and giving him things that help him have success.
Right. The thing as well, Jeff. So if you go to you have to work with me because this doesn't apply to me. But if you go to a disco and you're a really good dancer, and you make sure you dance next to the bad dancer, you're going to look good. Sam Darnold was going up against Daniel Jones.
That's a good way to put it.
That's the kind of analogy we're looking for there. This is interesting. We don't normally have this on Inside the Huddle. I don't do it on Monday morning. I didn't know this was booked. Someone's washing the windows. Remember my front windows cleaned while doing Inside Huddle. Brilliant. Hopefully you'll move on.
It's just another chapter in that book.
Honestly, hopefully you'll move on to another room in a second. I had no idea that was going to happen. So let's talk Sunday Night Football then, Jeff. You would have seen a bit more of this. I watched the first half on the way home last night in the car. The Lions had to rally late to see off the Rams in overtime. David Montgomery with the winning touchdown run. This is kind of what Dan Campbell said we would get, though, wasn't it? That they're going to get everyone's best game. And there was a lot of hitting in the first half.
It was. Let me just kind of tap the brakes. But I was going to say it was a playoff atmosphere, but it really was. The crowd was loud. The hitting was, like playoff hitting. I mean, it was a physical game. Those two teams went after each other, back and forth. And, there were some things in the game, Nakua got hurt. And then, the Rams were down 3 tackles by the end of the game. They had lost a starter, had gotten suspended by the NFL. Nokeboom came in. He was playing pretty well. Then he hurt his ankle. So they go to a guy that had 8 games of NFL experience, and he's playing left tackle, finishing out the game. So it was tough for the Rams, but they hung in there. And I just gotta love the Lions and Dan Campbell and the whole thing, because we had talked about this in last week's show. Can you, now that you're no longer the hunter, but you're the hunted, can you maintain that chip on your shoulder? And, you watch Anzalone play middle linebacker. I think he had 13 tackles in the game. There's a guy that basically New Orleans has kind of let go.
Right.
And, but, as long as they got number 97 coming off the edge, they got a chance. Man, oh man, does he have a motor.
Wow. I thought there was one play in the first half that summed up how these two teams were going to play the game. Amon-Ra St. Brown catches the pass. He stiff arms the guy all the way off to the sideline, turns upfield, and then gets absolutely leveled, takes one in the chest, and goes right back. So you've got 2 highlights on one play. You're going to hit us. We're going to hit you right back. So I think the Rams are going to, obviously they had some injury issues there last night, but I don't think the Rams are going to disappear on us, Jeff. I think they're going to be relevant this season.
No, you're exactly right. And Sean McVay does a great job, because you look at that roster and you say, who are those guys on defense in particular? But, he's replaced, guys like Ramsey, who's one of the greatest corners to play the game, and maybe the best defensive tackle that's ever played the game. And he's replaced all those guys in the last few years, and they're still playing quality football. I was impressed too, Neil, about when how what the Lions have done is more than Dan Campbell's fire up speeches.
Right.
You look at that organization, and they had a pressing need in the secondary. They needed to get better in the secondary. And you look at what they went out and did. Got Davis from Tampa Bay, and drafted really well. They drafted so well that Branch, who is a legitimate, maybe one of the best slot corners in the league, can now move back and play safety. So in essence, you're playing with 4 cover corners in a game at one time, which is a huge luxury for a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, they're legit. They're a legit roster, aren't they? They're not just a nice story anymore. And
Absolutely.
really the history of the franchise is for us. The players only look at the history and the bad history in a way that they want to reward the fans who've gone through it all. The rest of it doesn't weigh around their necks like an anvil. Not at all. They're really, really set.
Yeah, I think they've got a chance to be really, again, but it's so early, and you just got to
overreaction Monday.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. But hey, that's what makes it fun, because it's all fresh. It's so fresh in our minds right now because we just experienced it within 24 hours.
Let's talk about a couple of awards then. Let's do Player of the Week. I would say, for me, I'm going to say Saquon Barkley for the instant impact. I could be Joe Mixon as well, but Barkley did exactly what the Eagles wanted as well. He rushed for over 100 yards in Brazil. He scored 3 touchdowns. They've still got some issues. Jalen Hurts had 2 interceptions and a lost fumble. That's become something now for the Eagles. It was last year. Jalen not taking care of the football, but Barkley's going to make his life a lot easier. What about you, Jeff, for Player of the Week?
That's a great choice. I'm going to go on this one. Will maybe out of left field a little bit, but this guy was drafted by the Bills to fill a need, and there's been a lot of pressure on him to perform. And Greg Rousseau, who had 3 sacks in that game, really took over the game and made plays when they had to have plays. And his huge strip sack that ended up, being, I think, a turning point in the game was I think, instrumental in Buffalo being able to pull off that win. And I'm happy for a young guy who, has kind of now ascended into the role that he was drafted to take.
Coach of the Week, Jeff, lead us off on this. Which coaches?
Oh, man, I'm going to tell you. My knee-jerk reaction was Mike Zimmer for the way that Cowboy defense performed. But then I started thinking about it, and I go, wait a second. What are you thinking? How could you not vote for the guy who replaced the living legend in Bill Belichick and goes out against the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that we've all said has a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and you win them. You win the game.
24 years of Bill Belichick, and they were on to Cincinnati, and they got the win.
That one, to me, I have to give it to Jeremy.
I agree, because I think coaching when you've kind of got one hand tied behind your back, because he doesn't have the best roster in the NFL. So that was a scrappy win. And I kind of add Mike Tomlin into that as well.
Absolutely.
That win for the Steelers on Sunday night was exactly why Tomlin has never had a losing record. Didn't get much out of his quarterbacks. Running backs took over a little bit late in the game. But you cannot deny TJ Watt and the rest of that defense. And so they win on 6 Chris Boswell field goals.
And you think about Pittsburgh, and that is so Pittsburgh. Really, we all want Pittsburgh to open it up and, see the ball thrown down the field and, be Big Ben again and all that. But, as long as the Steelers are the Steelers, they're going to play great defense. And, they completely made life miserable for Kirk Cousins.
Right. So that's my guy, Jeff. You know that. Kirk's my guy. But when he's got defenders in his face, you can't throw the 2 interceptions he threw. And it just goes to show that either he completely melted down, which he doesn't normally do. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL under pressure. Fact. Statistics back that up. He deals with pressure well. He takes the hits. But you got a guy there, you can't step into it, and you're trying to throw the ball 20 yards down the left sideline into triple coverage, and it gets picked. I mean, that's just something to watch now, because, this is Overreaction Monday, so I'm just going to put it out there. But it's a part of the fabric, and it's a part of the story in Atlanta. They drafted Michael Penix, and he's going to sit there and everyone's going to know he's there. And it doesn't matter whether they believe it in the building. People like me are going to say it. Fans are going to know Michael Penix is sitting there. Kirk can't have too many of those performances, because I thought under the pressure, he kind of melted a little bit.
Well, again, it's the hardest position to play in sport. So I'm always going to give the quarterback a pass, and especially a guy like Kirk Cousins, who has the track record that he has. But the reality is exactly what you said. At 5:00 in the afternoon, Eastern time, they had already started with it's time for Michael Penix. It's the first game of the year, right?
Didn't even wait till Overreaction Monday.
No, I'm dead serious. It was, Michael Penix is, they got to get Penix in. I'm like, hold on. Like, sometimes when I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to that stuff, I just
pump your brakes. Yeah,
please.
And I do think Kirk is going to be fine. I'm just think that's going to be something that, even if it's not in his mind, it's going to be the noise that they have to block out.
Yeah. And that is probably harder maybe than playing the game.
Yeah.
Because, you play the game for 3 hours on Sunday, but the noise is 24/7 all week long.
Jeff, we are among friends. It's just you, me, and our Inside the Huddle friends. I don't think Tom Brady listens. So, first of all, Tom, you should, but you don't. So let's have an honest assessment, because, Jeff, you watch football like a coach. You want to be educated. You want to know if you're being told the right things. Tom Brady, the color commentator, first outing?
He's a rookie, and, he's going to. Well, Tom needs a little seasoning. Tom is.
Listen, you don't have to say any more than that. There was a pause. There was enough of a pause, and he's going to get better. So that's all we need.
You know what? That is such a tough job.
Sure.
And you remember, he's not had. Okay, so I think Troy Aikman does a great job, right? And I think Romo does a great job. But I know in Troy's case, and you can vouch for this, when NFL Europe was going, Troy was over in the spring broadcasting games and learning how to be an analyst and learning how to be a broadcaster. Tom's not had that opportunity. He's gone right in there, and the expectation when you jump right in there is going to be, well, he was the greatest quarterback that ever played, so he's going to be a great announcer. It doesn't quite work that way.
I think he was distracted yesterday. He probably said to Burkhart, hold my microphone. I'm going to go and show Deshaun Watson how it's done. Pass me a Browns helmet. This is driving.
I'll bet him. I'll bet at the end of it, he probably went, man, playing quarterback was really pretty easy compared to this.
Another tough job. Absolutely. All right, so that's week one. Still one game to come on Monday Night Football, of course, on Sky Sports, the Jets and the 49ers. I'll be back on Thursday with Phoebe Schechter to look ahead to week 2 in the NFL, where we'll be in Minneapolis. So myself and Ndamukong Suh will be at the game between the 49ers and the Vikings. All right, Jeff, I can give Sam Darnold a big hug. I don't know when I suddenly became a big Sam Darnold fan, but it seems to be materializing.
Go with it. As long as he's winning, go with it.
Exactly. No point denying it now. So, Jeff, until next Monday when we'll break down week 2, say goodbye to the good folks.
Aloha.